Right friends, welcome back to English Comprehension and Vocabulary. This is 52nd session and today is 18th April, and today we are going to deliberate on one important article pertaining to the state of economy in our country. This appeared in the Economic Times on 12th April, and tomorrow's discussion is open up petroleum marketing as well. Recently, dynamic pricing is announced in 5 cities in our country. Dynamic pricing means the petroleum prices will vary every day on an experimental basis. It is going to be implemented in 5 cities of the country in future, and this editorial pertains to Economic Times 17th April. This we are going to deliberate tomorrow. So, today the discussion is with regard to the state of economy. The glass is half empty, and sometimes we call it half full, sometimes we call it half empty. What is the difference? If someone says glass is half empty, same situation, you take two glasses with water up to half. In both the glasses, the water is up to half level, and here the optimist sees that the water is half full. If someone says the water is half full, that means he is some sort of optimist, and if someone says the glass is half empty, you can say he is somewhat pessimist. So, here glass is half empty means used to refer to an attitude of always thinking about the bad things in a situation rather than the good ones. A pessimist sees that a glass is half empty, whereas optimist sees the same glass as half full. So, pessimist and optimist, the difference is optimist always will have positive attitude, pessimist always look at negative attitude. So, glass is half empty means it is basically the attitude, right. So, here the glass is, this glass is half empty. So, instead of treating the present economy as from the optimistic way, things are not good. In his opinion, things are not good, and here at any point of time our economy may face problems because it is basically consumption driven, and that is why the author is using the glass is half empty, which indicates that a lot more needs to be done, right. And comatose, in fact, let us go through the passage. This glass is half empty with investments comatose, NPAs high, exports low, any recovery is statistical, not economic. We are thinking of GDP of 6%, 7%, 7.5%, something like that. It is only for statistical purpose. If you look into the real economy in our country as on date, in fact, things are not on the right way. Investments are comatose. What is the meaning of coma? Coma means the person who does not know anything, and such type of person is called person in coma. And comatose, the meaning you see, comatose means in a coma or very tired or in deep sleep because of extreme tiredness or hard work, at the same time extremely lethargic. So, here this comatose is the word used indicating that the investments are not forthcoming, almost dead. So, you can almost say that a person in coma sometimes may lead to death, and similarly the investments in comatose means the investments are almost dead, or you can say investments are abysmally low, to indicate that he used comatose. With investments comatose, NPAs high, non-performing assets reached alarming proportions in public sector banks. Exports low, only in recent times they started recovering, and any recovery, and we say statistically GDP is 7%, 7.5%, that is only for the statistical purposes, but not for the real purpose, or real sense is not there. He is explaining why the real sense is not there. The real issue with the recent near 7% GDP growth figure is not what it should have been, 6.7% or 6.5%, to correctly account for last year's note ban. Recently, some figures were released and people are discussing about if the effect of demonetization is correctly taken into account on MSMEs, the growth will be really 6.5% or 6.7%, but the discussion should not be on those lines. The real issue is not that. People are discussing about when demonetization has not, when demonetization is properly taken into account by the micro, small and medium enterprises, then what could have been the growth on those lines people are discussing. That is not the real issue. Real issue is something else. So, our discussion is centering around demonetization 6.5%, 6.7%, 7.1%, whether it is properly taken care of by MSMEs, whether proper methodology is there or not. These are immaterial, they are only for statistical purpose, and if you look at the real economy, something is going wrong. The real issue is that it is almost entirely driven by consumption. India's GDP growth is entirely, almost predominantly driven by consumption because of around 128 crore population, because of huge young population. Our average age, or you can say mean age in our country, is around 26 years. Predominantly young population in our country, basically resulting in this huge consumption. So, our GDP is predominantly because of this private consumption, or you can say consumption. Exports not satisfactory for the past 2 years, only recovering in recent times, but that is not enough. Private investment by the corporates, it is not coming up. In fact, the credit offtake from the banking system, has reached the lowest ever figure since 1950s, that is around 5% credit offtake from the banking system. So, these two are failing badly. Government expenditure is up to some extent, but overall our GDP growth is driven by private consumption. It is not good for the economy. Please don't discuss about all those aspects. Growth could have been different, that much, this much, but think about the real sense. Investments have been comatose for the past several years, or you can say investments are in coma for the past several years. Investments worth over $220 billion remain stuck in the pipeline. Investments are not forthcoming, and $220 billion investments are stuck in the pipeline. So, the private investments are not forthcoming. You cannot ensure real growth when private investment is not up to the mark, and government expenditure can do only up to some extent. And the need of the hour is immediately increase government expenditure, and subsequently private investment may also crowd in because of huge government expenditure. Exports have only recently started recovering. So, he is linking past event with the present. After 2 years of massive contraction, just exports are recovering in recent times, which means exports are recovering in recent times, which means that any further shock to consumption, because consumption is the main driver of GDP growth. Please understand carefully, consumption is the main driver of GDP growth. If any shock to consumption, you see he is explaining, shock can come, be it a monsoon mood swing, monsoon may not be proper, or a sudden rise in food and commodity prices. Food prices may rise, commodity prices may rise. Because of these factors, if shock to consumption happens, if the consumption reduces because of poor monsoon, because of rise in food prices, because of rise in commodity prices, then what will happen to the economy? Now, you see that any further shock to consumption has the potential to slow down the economy. When consumption affects, because we have just now seen India's growth is primarily due to private consumption. Whatever the reason, if something happens to private consumption, then what will happen? Then the growth will be slowed down, right? So, any further shock to consumption, be it a monsoon mood swing or a sudden rise in food and commodity prices, has the potential to slow down the economy. And the engines of investments and exports will be in no position to offer significant backup. Now, as the growth is predominantly because of consumption, engines of investments and exports will be in no position to offer any significant backup, right. So, primarily growth is driven by consumption, then if something happens because of adverse factors to consumption, then growth will be badly affected. That is the meaning. Commodities. Commodities are raw material or primary agricultural products that can be bought and sold. So, these are commodities. Oil is a commodity, then paddy is a commodity, like that. These are raw materials or agricultural products. These are commodities. So, if commodities prices increases, then what will happen? The economy may derail because the consumption part of the public may come down, or you can say the consumption by the individuals like you and me can come down. You cannot call public. Public means it refers to the governments. In economy, if we are referring to public, that means most of the times government. Then the government will be forced to step in by increasing short term revenue expenditure, cutting down on long term public investment and throwing years of fiscal consolidation efforts to the air. The government will be forced to step in. Under what circumstances? If the commodity prices increases, if food prices increases, if monsoon is not proper, then consumption will reduce. Under those circumstances, government will try to increase government expenditure and government may resort to short term increase in revenue expenditure so as to propel growth. Normally, long term investment or capital investment is desired by the government, but under times of that slowdown, government may resort to increasing short term revenue expenditure also, cutting down on long term public investment, because long term public investment may take years to get the results, but short term revenue expenditure will propel temporary growth. So, the government will be forced to step in by increasing short term revenue expenditure, cutting down on long term public investment and throwing years of fiscal consolidation efforts to the air. So, here when government increases expenditure, please differentiate between revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. What is revenue expenditure? Revenue expenditure is basically operating costs of running a business. Some machine repair is done, some house repair is done. This is revenue expenditure. Constructing a new highway, establishing new machinery, that is capital expenditure, are known as capex. Please look into these slides. This is capital expenditure, this is revenue expenditure. Repairing the road is revenue expenditure. Constructing a new expressway is capital expenditure. Similarly, establishing new machinery is capital expenditure. Repairing the machine is revenue expenditure. Similarly, constructing a new house is capital expenditure and whitewashing is revenue expenditure. Right? You got clear idea about what is capital expenditure, what is revenue expenditure, right? And having learnt this, the government will be forced to step in by increasing short-term revenue expenditure, cutting down on long-term public investment and throwing years of fiscal consolidation efforts to the air. Fiscal consolidation means fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit must not exceed certain percentage. For 2017-18 budget, fiscal deficit target is kept as 3.2% of GDP, and if monsoon is not good, if commodity prices rises, then what will happen? Consumption will be affected. If consumption is affected, then GDP will be affected, then government will step in. Government may resort to more revenue and capital expenditure. Instead of capital expenditure, government may go for revenue expenditure in the short term, because it will give immediate results. So, because of that process, what will happen? Fiscal deficit will increase. So, that is the meaning, throwing years of fiscal consolidation efforts to the air. That means leaving fiscal consolidation to the air. That means without keeping that in mind, the expenditure, or you can say the fiscal deficit, may go out of control. That is the meaning of this. Right. Look at the next paragraph. Next paragraph. Meanwhile, the absence of fiscal space, 3.2% is the limit. The absence of fiscal space will only make things worse for private investment and the ailing banking sector, which at this point is pining for a bailout. At present, when the fiscal space is limited, or you can say the absence of fiscal space will make things, what will happen when government is resorting to the revenue expenditure for propelling growth, then there will not be much fiscal space left. Government cannot spend on other things. When government for propelling growth is spending money on revenue expenditure, or you can say government is spending money to propel growth, there will not be much leverage, or you can say there will not be much fiscal space to take care of the ailing banking sector, which is looking for a bailout, pining for a bailout, pine for. Look into this example. Regina pines for her husband. Regina pines for her husband, who was arrested on framed up charges and lodged in central jail. So, pine for means longing for, or you can say, please understand through this example, Regina pines for her husband, who was arrested on framed up charges and lodged in central jail. Bailout. Suppose let us assume BSNL is into losses, Air India is into losses, really they are into losses. So, bailout is used in economy, basically the act of giving financial assistance to a failing business or economy to save it from collapse. So, bailout means an act of giving financial assistance to a failing business or economy to save it from collapse. So, in view of mounting losses, Air India and BSNL require a bailout package. So, meanwhile, the absence of fiscal space will only make things worse for private investment and the ailing banking sector, which at this point of time asking for a bailout, right. So, then other imbalances will also play in the background. Under these circumstances, other imbalances will also come into picture. Fiscal slippage, if we are not adhering to 3.2% as committed in the budget, fiscal slippages, that means if the fiscal deficit increases, that will almost certainly be frowned upon by global credit rating agencies. Frowned upon. Frowned upon means disapprove. Here you see frown upon. Smoking is frowned upon in several countries. So, frown upon means disapprove of. Smoking is frowned upon in several countries. Other imbalances will also play into the background. Fiscal slippage will be disapproved by global credit rating agencies. Then overt reliance on consumption, that is clearly evident, more reliance, that means clearly evident, plainly evident reliance on consumption for GDP. Look into this overt. Overt means done or shown openly, or you can say plainly apparent, there is nothing to hide. So, here you see the example, blatantly heinous crimes with overt racism are evident in some Western countries. Overt means done or shown openly, plainly apparent, right. Here overt reliance on consumption, that means more reliance, or you can say open reliance on consumption without adequate capital spending. When we are not spending on capital assets, we are dependent on consumption for GDP growth, and under these circumstances, overt reliance on consumption without adequate capital spending can potentially overheat the economy. This overheating of economy. What is the meaning of overheating of economy? This quite often you come across this word, overheating of economy. Overheating of economy is, it is the situation when increased demand results in raising prices rather than increase in output. When increased demand is there, then naturally output should increase, right. But sometimes what happens, when increased demand is there, then it will give rise to the prices instead of increasing the output. So, this is known as overheating. So, it is the situation which leads to the risk of inflation. So, overheating the economy increases the risk of inflation and subsequently promote a high interest rate regime. So, here when we are dependent excessively on consumption for our GDP growth, what happens is it results in overheating the economy, increasing the risk of inflation and subsequently promoting a high interest rate regime. So, these are the difficult circumstances, or you can say these are the situations which every economy would like to avoid, right. So, overheating we learnt. Increased consumption is also accompanied by increased imports, otherwise a natural economic phenomenon. So, here what happens, increased consumption is also accompanied by increased imports. You see, when we are consuming more without much domestic output, then our consumption will be accompanied by more imported products. Imported products means imported cell phones and imported accessories. So, increased consumption is also accompanied by increasing imports. Then when our imports increase, what will happen? But in the event of a seismic shock, in the event of a economic shock, then it can put pressure on the current account deficit and the rupee if not backed by exports and capital inflows. You see, in the event of seismic shock, it can put pressure on the current account deficit. Current account deficit, please look into this. Current account deficit is trade in physical goods, then services, primary income, that means the multinational companies will take away profits, royalty and all when our countries establish, or you can say when the multinational companies are established by Indians in other countries, we will get royalty and profits. So, this is known as primary income. Then secondary income is father sending money to son, or you can say son sending money to father. Son is in America. He is sending money to his father in India, that is a secondary income, or you can say foreign remittances. So, these 4 put together is a current account, and we have deficit of, maybe this figure may change, do not go sacrosanct with the figure. So, here around $30 billion is current account deficit. What he is suggesting is, or telling in this article is, when the imports increase, then the trade imbalance will be more, or you can say trade deficit will increase. When imports are more, this trade deficit will increase. This $120 billion is for 2015-16, and during 2016-17 it came down to $106 billion. So, here current account deficit will increase, and at the same time he is talking about the rupee, if not backed by exports and foreign capital inflows, if exports are not increasing, foreign capital inflows are not there, then rupee will be depreciating. Right? You see, foreign portfolio investments, when they are coming to the country uninterrupted, then a rupee will be at a normal position, or it may appreciate, but when foreign capital inflows are not coming, then this imports are increasing, exports are not increasing. Under these circumstances, India's problems will increase. So, one is current account deficit will increase because of all these features, or you can say because of more imports, because of more consumption, current account deficit will increase. And at the same time, when this foreign portfolio investments are affected, that means foreign portfolio investments are reduced, then rupee will depreciate. Please differentiate between foreign portfolio investments and foreign direct investments, right. So, we discussed several aspects here. A weak rupee makes imported goods much more expensive, causing inflation to further rise and convince RBI to keep tightening monetary policy. So, when the rupee depreciates, what will happen? Imports will become further costlier, and because of costly imports, then what will happen? Prices will rise, inflation will rise. Subsequently, what will happen? RBI subsequently will increase the interest rates, or you can say it will tighten the monetary policy. So, when the rupee depreciates, and at the same time when imports increase, imports bill will increase, current account deficit will increase, and at the same time when the foreign portfolio investments reduce, then rupee will depreciate. When rupee depreciates, then imports will become costlier, inflation will be there. Subsequently, RBI may go for tightening the monetary policy, and subsequently we will reach high interest rate regime, right. Then it is not just a Nostradamus economic meltdown risk that about. Who is this Nostradamus? Nostradamus is a French physician, belongs to somewhere around 16th century or so, and he is known for prophecies. He is known for prophecies. Prophecies means he gives the messages from God. So, this sentence is, it is not just like prophecies of Nostradamus with regard to economic meltdown risk. What is the meaning of meltdown? Meltdown means disastrous collapse or breakdown. The global financial system suffered a major meltdown during 2008. So, it is not like a prophecy by somebody. Some of the best years of Indian economy, 2000 to 2010, this is 2000 to 2010, tell us that simply relying on consumption, is not enough. So, he is warning, at present we are simply relying on consumption, it is not enough. In this decade, GDP trend growth sharply swerved up to 9%, while per capita income jumped by 200%. So, he is talking about 2000 to 2010 decade, 10 years of 2000 to 2010. At that time, GDP trend growth sharply swerved up to 9%. What is the meaning of swerve? Swerve means it is change the direction abruptly. change or caused to change the direction abruptly. So, the lorry swerved across the footpath and this resulted in death of 2 people, right. So, here in this decade GDP trend growth sharply swerved up to 9% while per capita income jumped by 200%. Not even the 2008 global financial crisis could unnerve the growth momentum. 2008 financial crisis could not make it lose confidence. What is meant by unnerve? Unnerve means losing the confidence or courage. Losing the confidence or courage. Temporary panic has unnerved me as I could not trace my house keys. So, 2008 financial crisis could not even unnerve the growth momentum, could not make it lose confidence. The Sensex grew from 5,000 to 15,000 between 2000 to 2010. In other words, the market capitalization of the top corporates grew by a huge 300% in the decade. So, he is continuing this. Please read this article. You can learn several aspects about Indian economy. You can understand several concepts. I have taken only part of this article. Oping means very large. Some of the European countries have oping debts, and with this I am concluding this because this article is quite large. You can go through it. That is Economic Times article of 12th April, and tomorrow we are going to discuss on open up petroleum marketing as well, right. So, tomorrow we will meet at 12:30 as usual. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thanks a lot.